Well, Republicans have taken back the White House and the United States Senate. As of about an hour ago, the GOP picked up the Pennsylvania Senate seat, giving them 53 seats in the Senate. There are still over 40 House races yet to be called, but it does appear Republicans will retain control of the House of Representatives. But congressional leaders in the House are not sitting by and waiting. They're already at work on an ambitious plan that will address the concerns of the American people, and that's going to be launched immediately upon when Donald Trump takes office. Joining me now to discuss this is House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who represents the 1st Congressional District of Louisiana. Leader Scalise, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Tony, it's great to be back with you, especially after such an historic victory for President Trump and the country on Tuesday night.
Well, let me start by congratulating you on winning your race. So that's number one. Number two, give us the latest, because I know you were crisscrossing the country, as was Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, campaigning, raising money. Where do we stand right now? What seats are we waiting to see to determine control of the House?
Yeah, where we are right now, there's 213 seats that have been called for the Republicans, 200 for the Democrats. So 218 is the majority. We're 5 away. And, when you look at the races that are outstanding, it's a number of races in California that haven't been called yet. But if you look at those, most of those races, our candidate is leading the way right now. We're watching them all closely. We still have a few opportunities to flip seats. The state of Alaska is still out, although we're ahead right now. And so we have a real opportunity to flip that seat from Democrat to Republican. Another similar seat in California, where we're leading in a seat that is currently held by a Democrat. So we could even grow the majority, but I feel very confident we'll hold the majority. And that's the most important thing. The Senate went Republican. They picked up another, as you pointed out, in Pennsylvania. And then President Trump not only ran the table, got the popular vote, but in historic fashion, won every single swing state, all 7. And I was in every swing state. In fact, I traveled with President Trump on Sunday. I was in every swing district all over the country, helping our candidates over these last few weeks. Everybody was leaving it all out on the field. But I saw the energy, Tony. People were fed up with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's policies. They want to secure the border. They want to get gas prices and food prices lower. But they were incredibly turned off by things like the weaponization of government, the constant just berating of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, calling people garbage, calling people Nazis and Hitler and racists. It's not working, Tony. People are tired of that kind of disgusting rhetoric, and I think it backfired on them because they offered no agenda. We were talking about the pocketbook issues that families are struggling with and how we're going to fix them and get this country back on track.
Well, the only issue that I heard Vice President Kamala Harris talk about over and over and over again was abortion until birth. And of course, you handled
paid for by taxpayers.
Yeah, right. And beyond. I mean, they just obviously the American people rejected that agenda. So let's talk about that agenda going forward as once you secure the majority. By the way, what do you think your margins will be? I mean, are we going to be 221, 222? What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be right around there. And look, we started with about that majority. We have a 4-seat majority today. We could end up right around the same spot. Everybody knew just the way redistricting has happened over the last few years. You don't have the ability to get to the days of a 30-seat majority on either side. So whoever won, it was going to be a close majority. So we're right about where we thought we would be. There were definitely a couple that we lost that we wanted to get. A lot of spending, in a lot of these races, $30 million or more was spent against our candidates. We're looking into some of the questionable spending activities, but at the same time, our candidates had messages, and that's why we're pulling out a lot of very close wins in some really tough Joe Biden districts. Those are the ones that, that really worked well for us. Having President Trump at the top of the ticket helped us in a state like Pennsylvania, where we flipped 2 seats from Democrat to Republican. And then an incumbent like Scott Perry, who was in a really tough race, they dumped millions, Tony, against him in the last couple of weeks. And people thought they were writing him off. They thought he was going to lose. And in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Scott pulled it out. We went and campaigned for him in the last week. And again, you saw the energy on the ground, and people were very pro-Trump and very pro Scott Perry, and he was able to pull it out in a very close race, which means, all of that work paid off.
And I think to the point that you make, people need to understand those days of these huge majorities, margins in the House are gone because of the redistricting, how narrowly divided the country is. So that means that you've got to be very, very precise with your agenda, because you only have a few votes to work with that you can lose when you're pushing things through the House. So let's talk about that 100-day agenda. What are those issues that are going to be addressed when the new Congress hits the ground?
Yeah, look, we've got a very unique opportunity with unified government. It doesn't happen often where Republicans have the White House, House, and Senate. And we're going to make the most of it by going and fighting for those families who are struggling. We ran on a very strong agenda of getting our economy back on track, Tony, of securing America's border, standing up for our allies around the world, getting rid of these crazy regulations, promoting more American energy. We're going to be focused on doing those things in the first 100 days. And you think about literally starting in January, the first 100 days, delivering on some really big things and getting the economy moving again, lowering costs at the grocery store, at the gas pump. I think you're going to see this economy turn around quickly. Geez, look, the day after the election, the stock market took off like something we hadn't seen since 2022, because people are optimistic and excited again because the Marxists, the communists were defeated. I mean, this direction they were trying to take our country, Tony, we couldn't sustain the spending, the radical policies, the open border, all the things they were doing. And now we're going to finally have an opportunity to turn around. We're not going to blow this opportunity. We are focused on what that first 100 days will look like, and I think it's going to excite people around the country.
Steve, you mentioned that the financial issues, the tax policies that benefit middle-income families, some of those are expiring.
Yeah.
So the timing is just right. Are those going to be a part of that package?
Tony, that's going to be front and center. One of the first things we do is make sure we don't have a tax increase. And President Trump was very clear about this. And we are in sync with President Trump on this. Look, I spoke with President Trump months ago about what that first 100 days could look like to make sure when we start in January, we will all be on the same page. We don't have the luxury of spending a few months trying to figure it out. We are going to start bullish on day one with a bold conservative agenda. Keep tax rates low. President Trump talked on the campaign trail about a number of things like no taxes on tips and taxes on overtime, other things. We're going to be looking at all of those things. We're going to have a lot of negotiations with our members with a small majority. Democrats unfortunately walked away in 2017 from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Not a single Democrat voted to cut taxes. Of course, it turned our economy around. It was great for the American people. But the Democrat Party just doesn't believe in giving you more of your money back. We do as Republicans, and we will, even if we have to go it on our own. But it's going to be good for the economy. And so we're going to be working with a small majority, but we're still going to be a focused majority working with President Trump to deliver some big wins for those hardworking families who are struggling.
Congressman Steve Scalise, let's talk about the weaponization. I mean, a lot of Americans for the first time in the last 4 years have lived in fear of their own government. Is that on the agenda?
It is. And in fact, this came up in a lot of places. I mean, look, I went to every swing state, Tony. You would have people coming up going, people watch what they were doing to President Trump and his family. I mean, they tried to ruin the guy. They tried to put him in jail. They tried to kill him. No person in political history has been more persecuted personally than Donald Trump. And he still gets up and fights for the American people. But this weaponization has to end. It's really rich right now. When you watch the media today, just watch the media. They're going, oh, gee whiz, is Donald Trump going to retaliate against all those people who went after him? And these agencies are all scared to death. I'm like, why didn't they think about that when they were going after Donald Trump? Why didn't they just say, we're going to stop today? They should just say, we're done. We're not going to go after Donald Trump anymore. And believe me, Donald Trump's going to clean house. He's going to get rid of all the dirty cops. And it needs to happen because I think people really want, Tony, and this came up a lot of places. They want a restored faith, and they deserve a restored faith in these agencies that we used to trust. And with law enforcement type agencies at the federal level that used to stand for law and order that started now just focusing on their political enemies, not about keeping Americans safe. That has to change. And I think that's going to be front and center in the things President Trump does when he appoints an attorney general and other people in those positions. It's going to be critical who he picks because he's going to need to bring in tough people who want a clean house. And believe me, we all know President Trump's tough.
Right. 45 seconds left. Last question, Congressman Steve Scalise. Do we need to be worried about the lame duck session of Congress?
No, look, there's a lot of work still left to be done, and I do think we need to get final agreements on government funding. We shouldn't be dumping that work onto President Trump. When he comes in, we need to have all of these issues resolved. The National Defense Authorization Act, the Farm Bill. There's a lot of work we have left that wasn't done this year that needs to get finished. We should not push that off into next year and kind of clog up the first few months of President Trump's administration, cleaning up last year's mess. President Trump's got a bold agenda. He wants to go to work fixing the problems that Joe Biden and Kamala created. We need to take care of our business before the end of this year so he can have that fresh start.
So no tricks from Chuck Schumer over in the Senate we got to be worried about?
No Christmas Eve omnibuses and all that garbage. Speaker Johnson made it clear last year, we're done with that. We put that to bed last year. We're not going to do that again this year.
All right. Very good. Congressman Steve Scalise, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us today.
Great being with you. God bless, Tony.